In a previous lecture, we studied about the difference in the temperature of coastal region and temperature of continental region. That means land. Today, in this lecture, we are going to study the next part of this chapter 5. Let's start with an example. Look at this picture. Here we see that a bowl of water is kept for boiling. Now, from this example, we are going to understand temperature. Let's start. When water starts heating, it first gets heated into the lower part of the bowl. I repeat, when water starts heating, it first gets heated in the lower part of the bowl, and it slowly the upper part starts getting heated. I repeat that when the water gets heated in the lower part, slowly and gradually the upper part of the bowl starts getting heat. Slowly, when all the water in the bowl, gets heat, what happens is we start seeing bubbles. Here we see bubbles. These bubbles appear when all of the water gets heated. Now, why does these bubbles come up? What causes these bubbles? The answer to this question is the bubbles are caused because due to the heating of water, the air particle or the oxygen which is present in the water also gets heated, so that the heated oxygen starts coming up. The oxygen which is there in the water, when it gets heated, it starts coming up. So the process is like the hot bubbles come up, which brings up the hot water from the below portion, and the upper portion water gets down. Again, when the water gets heated more, it comes up along with the bubbles, and again the upper water goes down. This happens repeatedly. Somewhat similar thing happens in the nature. Now, look at this picture. Here, we have a physical map of the world with some lines drawn on it. We have the red color lines and the blue color lines. The changes in temperature first starts from the oceans. I repeat, whatever changes happens in the land or whatever temperature changes we see happening on the land, that temperature changes first gets started into the oceans. What happens in the oceans is that due to temperature difference, both vertical and horizontal currents, that is air waves, develop in ocean. So when this thing happens in the ocean, it creates somewhat like pressure in air above the ocean. This results into creating sea waves. Now, the red lines are the hot air. See, you all can see these red lines. These red lines means the hot current, means the hot air, which comes out from the continental areas. The hot air is converted into cool air, that is blue lines. These blue lines which are going inside, see, all of the blue lines are going inside on the land. These blue lines are the cool currents, cool air. As we know that wind is mostly created during daytime, that is due to the sun's heat. That hot wind goes to the ocean, and in the night time and during the daytime, cool wind is passed to the continental areas, that is to land from where hot wind comes from. I repeat, I repeat that since wind is mostly created during daytime on land because of the sun's heat, what happens that this hot wind goes into the sea. This hot wind goes into the sea, and that going of hot wind into the sea is done during night time. And what happens is that this hot wind gets converted into cool wind, and during the daytime that cool wind goes into the land. So the conversion or turning hot wind into cool wind is done in the ocean's atmosphere. Into the oceans. See, ओशन के एटमॉस्फेयर में सभी हॉट विंड को कोल्ड विंड में कन्वर्ट करने का काम होता है. Now, the next thing which happens is that this air also affects the water temperature. I repeat, the air, whether it is cold air or hot air, it affects the water temperature. So, when the hot air is present in the water, it becomes warm. Now let's see another picture. Here in this picture we will see how air gets affected. Air affects water. Now what happens in ocean water is that the ocean water or ocean current from equatorial portion, the ocean current from the equatorial portion, that means the torrid zone, travels to the polar region. The current from the torrid zone travels to the polar region, that is north and south poles, and again it flows back from polar regions to the equatorial region, that means to the torrid zone. First what happens that the water currents, ocean currents first flow from torrid zone to frigid zone, and again the currents which are cold currents, those currents flow from frigid zone to torrid zone. Here also the hot water is cooled. The hot water from equatorial region, the hot water from torrid zone is carried to frigid zone. That water is hot, and when the water comes from frigid zone to torrid zone, that water is cool. Now, while flowing the water from equatorial portion to polar regions, that means from torrid zone to frigid zone, what happens is the temperature increases. I mean, the temperature is hot in the coastal regions. Wherever the coastal regions are there, where the temperature gets hot. When? When the currents are flowing from torrid zone to frigid zone. Whereas when ocean currents flow from frigid zone to torrid zone, the temperature is cool in the coastal areas. Equatorial portion is that portion where mainly hot currents are formed. This will be all for our today's lecture. We will study the next part in our next lecture. Thank you.